Hello, everybody. This is Alan Underwood with CodingBlocks.net. And in this particular video, I'm going to be talking about the specification pattern, which we covered in episode 63 on the podcast. And I think it might have been a little bit confusing at the time, so I wanted to give some examples, some code samples that might help folks out in understanding this thing. So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to go through what the pattern is itself. So using several different sources on the internet, Wikipedia, and all over the place, there's a pretty decent consensus on is satisfied by. So that's always going to return you a Boolean. In the case of what we're doing here, we're going to do a composite specification, basically meaning you can use generic. So you can pass in the type that you want to be used when you're doing the specification pattern. So is satisfied by, that's going to be what you override in all your classes that are going to be doing the specification. Then you have this and, or, and not. So basically you can chain these specifications together, and we'll get to that later. There's also, because we're in .NET, you can also do an expression. So you can pass in the lambda type declaration when you want to do these so that it's a little bit prettier and easier to do along the way. And that's it in a nutshell. So I think probably the best thing to do is to jump in and show you some examples. So the easiest way that I could think to do this was, in the real world, the whole reason you would even use a specification pattern is when you have complex business objects that you don't want to mix a bunch of things into. So I gave the example on the show, and I tried to keep it consistent here about orders. So if you think about a business that's an e-commerce business, they're going to have different departments. And in those departments, you're going to have accounting, you're going to have customer service, you're going to have, inventory control, all kinds of things. So really what I wanted to do is I wanted to show that in an order object itself, you don't necessarily want to mix in these privileges and these roles, because the order has nothing to do with roles in the system. And users don't necessarily have anything to do with orders, right? Like if you're somebody that's working in inventory, or you're working in, the product area, then you probably don't even care about orders. You care about making sure that those products have the right descriptions, images, and all that stuff. So it doesn't make sense to put that logic on the user, nor does it make sense to put the user logic on the order. And that's where the specification pattern comes into play. Is now what you can do is you create a class that takes in those things, and then you can clearly define what meets the criteria. So one of the things I had mentioned was in the podcast was maybe we have roles, right? So just like I said a second ago, so you have your customer service rep, you have a manager, accounting, shipping, and invoicing, right? And just for the sake of simplicity, I made this contrived example. So there's really not a whole lot going here. And in the real world, you probably wouldn't have an enum that had your roles. There'd probably be some more sophisticated way of doing that. But this should at least illustrate what we want to get done here. So when you create a user, you basically assign that user a list of roles, okay? And then depending on that, that's going to tell you what these people can do when it comes to an order. So let's take a look at this. In the domain-driven design example, I basically have this order aggregate. So if you think of this being the big thing that would manage all the line item details and all that, again, it would be way more complicated, but I just wanted to illustrate this. So you can discount by amount, get total discounts, and get order total. So the discount by amount, this is where the specification pattern is going to be used in my example here, is if you're in shipping, really, should you be able to discount? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe there's a shipping amount that you could take off of it. That might get a little bit too confusing for this. If you're a customer service representative, maybe you can only do 10%, but a manager can do 25%. So there's all these types of business rules that might wrap around it and can get really nasty depending on how it's implemented. So along those lines, then let's look at this order aggregate. You see here, I just did a few things, nothing major. And I don't think I actually implemented anything here, so maybe we'll do that as we go. So here's this can discount by amount. This is where we're utilizing the specification. So here you'll see that I'm bringing in the specifications library, and I have the order domain because I need that. And then I believe I should have also pulled in the user, but it looks like I'm doing that here. So I want to show you here what I've got is I am inheriting from the composite specification, and here I'm saying this has to be of type order aggregate. Now, you might say, well, is this ever really going to be that reusable if you're doing that? Maybe, maybe not, but at least this way I can lock it down and I know that what comes in here will be a valid use case. And so when this class is called, I'm always going to have this active user. So whoever's logged into the system using it, this theoretical system, what kind of additional discount we want to do, and the user discount threshold. So one of the things I did here, keeping with the clean code type thing, is I wanted to make sure that I had this user discount threshold. So let's walk through it. If when you create this thing, you new up this can discount by amount specification, we're going to pass in the user the additional discount. All right, so we're just going to set those to these local variables here. And then I'm going to say this user discount threshold. So this is where we basically want to, maybe I need to figure out how to work this thing. Let's see, does F12 work? So I'm using Visual Studio for Mac, basically just because I wanted to try it out. Sweet, F12 works. All right, so this goes right to it here. And you can see here, I've got it set to 0. So by default, you're not allowed to discount at all. And then I said, okay, well, if you're a customer service representative, I'm going to allow you to discount by 15%. And if you are a customer service manager, you can go all the way up to 35%. Otherwise, you get nothing, right? So again, this is probably not where you would have this logic. You'd probably have it on the user class with some other complicated things, but this will at least show you how the specification pattern can be used here. And then, so after that happens, this is satisfied by, this is what I was telling you, that you override on these things. And so here we're going to say, all right, give me the order. Does it have a value? If the order didn't have a value here, so going back to our clean code series, rather than have a bunch of these things in line, so like if underscore order dot get order total is greater than 0, then true, else false. Instead of doing all that right there, name your methods in a way that makes sense, and then that way people can read this thing like a book, right? So get does order have value? Okay, if it doesn't, then let's go ahead and exit out of here. Get does additional discount make order value negative? You can read that and you know exactly what that means, or hopefully you do. And I like to, a lot of people don't do this. I like to do the equal true just because it's very explicit. It's easy to see this is exactly what I wanted right here. It's just a style preference for me. Pick your poison there. But here, if it's going to make it negative, let's go ahead and return false, right? Get does new discount exceed user threshold? So this is where it's going to look at the percentages. And if it does, return false. Basically, was it satisfied? No, it wasn't. Okay, if all these things pass here, then you're good to go. Go ahead and return true. And that, in the gist of it, is pretty much it. So you'll see here, this is what I was talking about, like these little special cases. Having all this stuff in line up here would make this thing read a lot worse. Like you'd have to trace all the logic, but here now you can read it, just like skim through it really quick and see, okay, I see what they're testing. And that's pretty much it. So I guess now then, let's go look at our example. And first, let's make sure this thing builds. I mean, I believe it does, but probably worth trying it. And it does, so our build is successful. It's up here on the Mac instead of down here in Visual Studio for PC. Interesting design decision, but this is Xamarin Studio. I think that they extended. So anyways, into it here. So basically, as we explained before, if you are a customer service representative or a manager, then you have the ability to discount things and at different rates. So we looked at the specification, and a representative can do 15% and a manager can do 35%. So here we created me, Alan Underwood, and you'll see the only role I have is invoicing, so I shouldn't be able to discount anything. Michael, he was created with accounting and he's a customer service representative, so he should be able to discount things. And then Joe is a customer service manager, so he should be able to discount anything he wants as well. And then down here, we created some order dummy objects here. But basically what this is this is the amount of the order, and then this is the discount. And to prove that, if we go in here in F12, you'll see that what's passed in is the current total discounts and the order total. And so you'll see the $100 with 0 discounts, $50 with $10 worth of discounts, so 20%, and then $40 with 0 discounts. All right. And then here what we're going to do is we're going to create our initial set of specs. And all we're checking for here is we're going to this factory. So I like to use things in a factory because I don't want my regular application to have to know all the logic to new up certain things. Although this is a pretty simple one, I still like pushing things through a factory if possible. And that, whatever, we'll just go with that. So the get user can discount specification. So let's take a look at that thing. All this is saying right now is you pass in the user, and then if we look at this, let's go back. User can discount. No, that's actually what I wanted. And then here you'll see active user comes in, and then down here is satisfied by. All it's checking for is, are you a customer service manager or a representative? That's it. That's all it wants to say is. So if you can discount, that's the only thing it is. It's not got anything to do with the amounts yet. And so because I'm not either a rep or a manager, mine should all come back false. Michael is a representative, so his should all come back true, because these are all still using that can discount, not how much. And then Joe can discount spec should also all come back true. So that's all I've got active right now. Let's go ahead and build this thing. And let's run it. All right, and so if we look at this, did we get what we expected? So Alan can modify, false, 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 good. That was on each one of the orders. Outlaw can do all three, and Joe can do all three. That's exactly what we expected. And let's focus on a little bit more interesting stuff other than you just can or you can't. All right, so let's get into some more realistic business logic here. So Michael's a customer service rep, and we've already said he's got a 15% leeway that he can use, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to new up ones for a number of specifications. Now, typically you wouldn't hard code them in here like this, and it would probably be a little bit more elegant. But for the case of this, it'll be easy to see. So we're going to say Michael can discount order 1 by 10. All right, so order 1 was $100 and 0. So that's only 10%, right? So we would think that he could do that. But then the next one, Michael can discount order 1 by 25. He should not be able to do that because that'll put it over his 15% threshold, right? And let's go ahead and see what happens here. Let's just step through the code. So if we look at this user can discount amount specification, this is where we're using that lambda syntax. So we're using that expression type. So here we're going to pass the order in. And inside this thing, we're actually going to new up a couple other specs, or we're going to create these. So we're going to say the user can discount, which is what we tried earlier. And then we're also going to say get can discount specification. So the first one is, can the user do it at all? And the second one is, can we do it by the amount? So if we look at this one, user can discount. So again, this just came back to the, are you a customer service rep or a manager? And then this one down here is where we're going to look at the amounts. And this is where the business logic came in. So the is satisfied by right here was where we stepped through. Does it have an order value? Does it make it negative? Does this go over the user's threshold? So this is where the complex business logic gets into place. And so here's the cool part, right? When you have specifications now, you can chain these things together. Because as you can see here, I'm creating 2 of them. And so I'm going to say, wait, first, did this order satisfy this specification? If yes, then let's go to the next one. Otherwise, it's going to short circuit out here and go to false. Can they do this adjusted amount? If it's true, then it's going to return that. And so that's beautiful. This basically allows us to enforce previous rules within this one and chain them together. And I'm doing all this in a fluent syntax, so it's really elegant and easy to see. So let's get back over here and let's go ahead and just aggregate, or not aggregate, let's comment these out and we'll build this. I should probably save that first. All right, and now let's run it. Wish I knew what run was. Start without but Command Alt Enter. All right, we'll do that next time. All right, so let's take a look at this. So check it out, exactly what we thought. So he can modify order one. Remember that was $100, and we tried to discount it by 10. Yeah, go ahead and do it. The other one, it's the same order, $100, but 25. It says you can't do it. We exceeded his threshold. So that's beautiful. All right, so the last thing I want to show here, at least in this particular video, is the ability to chain these specs together to make a new specification. So that whole and or not, this can be really useful if you have multiple specifications you want to chain together. So in this case, we already had this Michael can discount spec that we saw way up here at the top, right? And this was basically, again, only looking at what role he was in. Maybe we also want to say, all right, well, we had a value for orders come in, and we want to just take that, right? So let's say that just theoretically something was passed in, and we say discount amount equal 25, right? And we'll do that. And maybe here what we'll say is we want this specification for that. So we're going to say var Michael can discount, input amount equal, and we're going to say the factory dot I order aggregate get can discount by amount specification, right? And I can, the additional amount here, we're going to say it was discount amount, right? So I think maybe, did I not provide everything? Yeah, I got to have the user as well. So let's put Michael in here also, just because that's what this one requires. All right, so now, oh, it didn't like a double, did it? Okay, so this is why sometimes var stinks. Let's do decimal. All right, make life easy on ourselves. What? There we go. I had it wrong. All right, so with that now, we've got this whole notion that we have two specs, right? We have this Michael can discount spec, and we have he can discount the input amount, which in this case was 25. So in the real world, you might have a situation where you say something like this. Okay, var Michael can do it all spec equal, and then we're going to say here, we're basically going to create a new specification by chaining these things. So Michael can discount spec dot and Michael can discount input amount spec, right? So check it out. Now we have this new specification by chaining these other ones together. And this is just like you would expect it to do. So if this one's true and this one's true, when you do the is satisfied by, then you'll get back true. If this one's false and this one's true, then you'll get back something different. So let's do this. Let's see exactly what happens right now. So we're going to say a console.writeLine Michael can discount order. Actually, we should do this something a little bit more reasonable so that we can do two tests. So let's make this $10. Order one by $10. And we're going to use string interpolation because it's much, well, no, we can't here. So let's just do this. And we'll say Michael can do it all spec dot is satisfied by, and we're going to say order one, right? And then let's just copy this line and let's do order two. So we know order two he shouldn't be able to do because order two is already discounted by 20%, and that's already above his threshold. So let's just do this and see what happens here. And we should come out with something pretty interesting. Let's build this. I think I know the shortcut now to do the launch. Worked. So check it out. Beautiful. Order one by $10. Yes, he can do it. That's only a 10% discount on $100, but he cannot do order two. So that's exactly what we wanted to see. And that's pretty exciting stuff, right? Now you can have a number of specifications that you can chain together to make more complex specs, right? User can do this, user can do this, user can do that. Instead of having a bunch of all those things together, you can literally chain them together and make it. So this is the way that you can use the specification pattern to do validations and that kind of stuff. There are additional things that you could do with this. If you had collections, you could literally have it in collection of orders and say, hey, only return me the ones that are available. So let's just do this. We have 3 orders right here. Let's do var my orders equal, well, actually, let's make it a little bit more obvious. I order aggregate orders equal new, sweet. We'll say order 1, order 2, and order 3. All right, so just cramming that thing into a list. And now let's do something interesting here. Let's say we only want back the ones that Michael can actually discount by $10. All right, so we'll keep the same thing up here, and let's say what did I call this thing? Orders dot where, and we'll say O for the, oh come on, oh, I'll probably have to include system.link. Yep. Alright, that usually helps. Alright, so now let's try this. Now we should have something a little bit better. Yeah, order dot where, and we're gonna say O. We're gonna say O dot, or Michael can do it all spec dot is satisfied by O equal true. So again, I like to call it out explicitly, and let's make this a new list. So let's see, var Michael can modify by 10 orders. All right, and then here, probably the easiest way to output this thing would just be to do a loop around it, right? So let's do for each var O, and Michael can modify by 10 orders. Console.write line. Oh, this is going to be fairly useless because I didn't have I didn't put any kind of identifier on it, but whatever. Order value. Here we can do some string interpolation because we've got the O. So we'll say O dot here we go. Sweet, get order total, and discount by O dot get total discounts, right? So that we should only see 2 come out here, order 1 and order 3. Actually, order 3 he won't be able to do either because 10 would be 25% of that. So we only expect to see order 1 come out of this thing right here. So Michael can discount. Boom. All right, let's see if this works the way we expected it to. If not, I apologize for wasting your time. Sweet. Exactly what we wanted, right? Michael can discount order 100. Oh, but it didn't actually discount it. I probably should have kept the thing in there because I don't actually have it returning the discount right now. That we'll save for later. But that was where in the order aggregate, I don't actually have it doing anything yet. But you see the whole thing, right? So we had 3 orders, and by discounting $10 on each, this is the only one that passed, and that makes sense. So this is a way that you could actually say, hey, give me a list of everything that he can do this to. So I hope you can see the value of this thing. We've done some validation here. We've done some object collection gathering, and in a fairly nice way, right? Here, this is pretty clean. I mean, you'd have something that populated your orders, and then here you could literally just say, hey, give me back everything where this specification is met. So in my opinion, pretty useful stuff. Again, it helps keep your code separated and clean so that, you don't start mixing in things that don't really make sense in different domains. So, and it's reusable and it's testable. So hopefully that clears things up for the specification pattern for you. I really do hope you appreciated this and enjoyed it and learned something. If you like this video, please do leave us a thumbs up. Please leave your comments and feedback below. We will have some links in the descriptions to episode 63 where we talked about the specification pattern, as well as some other things domain-driven design geared. And we've got a whole series of those. And if you haven't heard the podcast, please do go give it a try. We talk about everything from best practices to patterns to tips and tricks, and we try to have some fun all along the way. So that's about it. If you guys have any questions, again, just leave them below, and hopefully be back soon with some more content for you. Appreciate it. Bye.